Welcome back to Edgework on the Hammer Betting Network, a daily live NHL show Monday through Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on Twitter at Edgework Show. You can find us on YouTube as Edgework. And if you want to track all the picks that are made Monday through Friday by everyone who's on the show, you can go to the BetStamp app. You click the little icon where it's two people side by side. It says Find Betters. Click on there. You can search for us as Edgework. You can track all the picks in real time, see how we do throughout the course of the week. I am very excited about today's show, not only because we have a lot of NHL games tonight, there's some cool storylines going on, but there were some cool or interesting, I guess, stories that went down last night. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Are there any takeaways from last night's games that went on that stand out to you?
Short answer is no. Longer answer is I'm just happy to be here after breaking a world record last week. I became the first person, not just on the Hammer Network or here at Edgework, to advocate for a team as my best bet, have them score 8 goals, and lose that bet. So bow down, everyone, for I have returned. Now, if you want to talk about last night, okay, we can talk about some pond hockey in Vancouver. I think we have the right guy here to do so in So Money here. But I had to at least mention, before we talk about Vancouver and Montreal, the all-time pond hockey game was last Tuesday. So, yeah, we lost the bet last week, losing 9-8, but you're welcome for the entertainment. So Money, how entertained were you last night by the Montreal-Vancouver game? Obviously, listen, 4-0. We're starting to, get bummed out about the team. We're cashing Boudreau first coach fired tickets, and then some stuff happened.
Yeah, that game was a microcosm of my life as a Canucks fan, and kind of what I go through on a day-to-day basis here. The team complete no-show in the first period. I'm sitting here thinking that how do you not show up at all, right? Like you know what's going on around the team, just complete no-show, and then all this spark comes out of nowhere, so they get your hopes up, and the team's starting to look good. They even take the lead, right? Everything's looking good in the third period, and then they're losing again, and then they come back and score. So now I'm sucked in, of course, as usual, right? Like they always end up getting me in the end, and there's no doubt in my mind that when is their next game? It's against the Sharks, I think. Like there's no doubt in my mind that they're gonna come out and just get smoked by the Sharks here, right? Like it's just the way it works.
Yeah, they're not winning that game.
Yeah.
There's no chance.
That team's just a gong show right now, too, right? Like, you're looking at all the storylines surrounding it, too. It's not just the fact that they're losing games or they're in these ridiculous shootouts and blowing leads and stuff. It's on top of that, it's Brock Boeser gets scratched on Hockey Fights Cancer Night, and then all of a sudden he's in the lineup because there's an injury in warm-ups, and Bruce Boudreau had no idea. Like, there's just so much stuff going on surrounding it. I was listening to something yesterday, Elliot Friedman saying that this is beyond Brock Boeser and JT Miller and Bo Horvat potentially being traded. This is possibility of maybe Demko being traded and a complete restart here in Vancouver. It's just I don't even know what to do when looking at them, because that's kind of what it's been like year after year after year, right? Like, you're looking at this team and it's like, well, they might rebuild, and then no, they're going to do what the NHL has now moved to with the retool. They're just going to retool, and then somehow they go out and they buy the wrong tools.
And like the worst thing too for me is that like all these years they keep sucking me in. The one year that I'm okay with them losing a few games, right? For me to actually win a bet where it's correlated on them losing, right? They in the last couple of weeks here, for 4 games they've trailed in the third period and come back and won. Like the one time that I don't need that to happen.
Just playing for the coach. They're just playing.
It's devastating for me, though.
Listen, it's what we talked about. We've been talking about for weeks, right? This is a bad brew This is a bad
Yeah.
mix. All these
Yeah.
players are individually like very good and very valuable theoretically throughout the rest of the league, right? But
Yeah.
like hockey is based a lot on chemistry, and it's just this group is not working. It just is. I don't. It's not the coach. It's not necessarily the goaltender. Although that's now this major issue because you don't even have the like fingers crossed Demko might have a good game any day now type of thing, and you're relying on guys that you did not think that you were going to rely on between the pipes at the start of the year. But just fundamentally, the group doesn't mix. And sometimes that happens because you can make all these great draft picks individually, right? Like all of these picks were largely successful, even some of the free agent acquisitions and the guys that they plucked, from Europe, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's just not working. It's just not the correct mix. It's the correct mix for an average team that is going to play some really entertaining games from time to time. But it's just not, a playoff or sort of deep run type of a mix at this point. And it'd be very surprising if it just all of a sudden became that way.
Todd, what were you thinking watching last night's shootout, track meet, whatever you want to call it?
I was I was not enjoying it because my night hinged on either Caulfield or Pedersen hitting overs on their shots. Caulfield scored like on his third shift of the game, and the next shot I got from either of them was the Pedersen OT winner. Just neither of them shot the entire game.
Oh man.
Yeah, I had someone message me yesterday morning asking me my thoughts on a Caulfield over 2.5 shots on goal. I was like, oh, I think that's probably pretty good. Talk through it with them, like why they wanted to do it. I'm like, yeah, I think that's fine. I see that the score's 4-0 in the first period. I'm like, wow, Caulfield must be involved in this. There's no way he's not involved. Yeah, I'm sorry, Todd. That's unfortunate. That's a bad bounce there. All right, looking ahead to tonight's games, there's a bunch of games on the schedule. I want to start with a head-to-head. As Todd mentioned in our group chat earlier, that's what the people come here for. And who else could it be other than Matt and Todd going head-to-head on this game? So just to tee it up, the Ottawa Senators, the LA Kings clashing in this one. The Senators are a team that they started out not so great, bottom of the league. I mean, it's not like things have necessarily like turned around there in Ottawa. They're not gunning for top spot in the league at this point, but they've started to play better, and most of that has been on the back of their captain, Brady Tkachuk. All of a sudden over the weekend, he just went old-time hockey Eddie Shore on everybody, and he's fighting, scoring goals, and he says, watch this, I'm going to put the team on my back, and we're going to win this game. In mostly because I'm going to will us to that. And now all of a sudden this Ottawa team is looking like they've got some life under them. They've got some jump to their game. Todd, start with you. You're going head to head with Matt on this game. What are you seeing in this Sens LA Kings game tonight?
Yeah, I played the Senators last night at -109. I just really like what I've seen from them of late. Over the last 10 games, they've controlled 56% of the expected goal share, which is third in the league. Despite that, they've only won 5 of the 10 games. A big reason for that is simply they haven't scored on like their 5,000 chances. They've only scored on 4% of their 5-on-5 shots during the streak, which is dead last by a mile. But the good news is the right team's coming to town. The Kings have had goaltending issues all season long. They're near the bottom of the league in 5-on-5 goals against. Jonathan Quick has an .888 save percentage and poor goals saved above expected numbers. So if the Senators can continue to generate 5-5 opportunities like they have, they should be able to score on a much higher rate, given the way Quick's playing right now.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of that. Just like I haven't the last 4 weeks that we've gone, head to head, if you will. And I think we're doing this thing where one of us wins, one of us loses, each week. I think I got you last week with the Winnipeg Jets winning as an underdog at home against the Colorado Avalanche. And that wasn't because the Jets were a better team than the Colorado Avalanche. I'm not even really sure that the Kings are necessarily a better team than the Senators. And this might be one of these deals where it's just kind of turning, right? Where the Kings had this good sort of metric start to the season and the Senators didn't. And now the Senators are starting to kind of, as we've talked about on this podcast, they're starting to gel. They're starting to get it figured out. They're starting to be the team that we expected them to be at the start of the year, where their market rating and where their season-long point totals were. That being said, my numbers say like if you can get something with a plus in front of it, ideally a +110, then the Kings need to be a play. Right now, they're +106, +107. I think is kind of the best number in the market right there. So it isn't so much that I've like even bet this yet. I'm just kind of waiting for honestly people to agree with Todd bet on the Senators, get this number up. Todd will sit there with his minus 109 and have the time of his life, and then we'll come back and we'll grab our plus 110. And honestly, we're kind of talking about the same thing there, right? With an appropriate value of Todd at minus 109 at me at plus 110. Obviously those numbers aren't going to exist concurrently, but over the course of the market, from the open last night till the puck drop tonight, that's kind of the whole point here, right? You get the best of the number where you can. So fundamentally, I'm sitting and waiting and hoping people see and get excited about, honestly, some of the narrative stuff that Zack had mentioned with, Tkachuk getting, putting the team on his back, et cetera, et cetera. If he wants to do that again, more power to them. But, that's not something you're going to do all 82 games, if you will. So I'm just kind of waiting on this. We'll see if we can get a plus 110 on the Kings, and I'll hop in at that point.
And if anybody ever needed any type of convincing of why you should sign up for multiple sports books, especially including the Score Bet, and why you would sign up there as well, if you go onto the BetStamp app and you plug in all the sports books that you have, you can see that you're looking at tonight's game. You'll see there's a opportunity to get the Ottawa Senators at plus 100 on different book and plus 106 on the LA Kings there. So that is the power of line shopping. I do actually have a best bet in this game myself. I'm looking at Alex DeBrincat, anytime goal scorer here, plus 170 as seeing best price on this one. Most of this is just Alex DeBrincat is in a contract year. He's going to be restricted free agent at the end of the season. I think there's going to be some desire to potentially boost up some of these numbers here for him. We are seeing the Senators turn some things around a little bit. That line DeBrincat was playing on, it's not like they've been playing bad. He's just under point per game so far, but I feel like we might see a little bit of an uptick, and he's performing below his expected goals despite generating a good amount of chances so far to start this season. So plus 170 for DeBrincat anytime goal scorer against team with struggling goaltenders. I will take that all day. The other thing was, I don't know if you guys saw this. Did you see the egregious trip at the end of the Senators-Sharks game the other day that led to the Claude Giroux goal? Oh, my goodness.
I missed that one. That one got past me.
Of all the stuff that is being called or not called that has gone viral online lately, if you get a chance to go and watch this one, it's a great goal. It's hilarious. Claude Giroux goes on a 2-on-0 and just rips a slap shot from the top of the circle on a 2-on-0. But leading to that, there is a crazy trip out by the blue line against the Sharks that they have every single right to be going absolutely mental over that no call as they were pushing late in the game. Anyways, next game here, Winnipeg, Florida, we'll go to, because we got double best bets in this one. So money, the Florida Panthers, they picked up a couple of wins against the Kraken and your Vancouver Canucks over the past few games, both notably 5-1, allowing only one goal in each of those games. This Florida team, they should be good, maybe not great, but they should be good. They've been struggling a little bit with Bobrovsky. You're looking here at this Florida Winnipeg game. It's a matchup where on the other end you have a team who's been getting incredible goaltending. What are you seeing in this Florida Winnipeg game?
I see a Florida team that, even though they're missing Barkov and a couple of other regulars there, they're a team that, especially on the road, is really trying to tighten up defensively. Now, they did play the Canucks, which, I mean, at that time, there's not much to say about that game, but I was really impressed with their game in Seattle against a team that has shown that they can get after it. So I do like the way that Florida is trying to play defensively. I think that can work well for them in Winnipeg in what should be a tighter game, because the Jets are trying to do the same thing as well. I think that if they can if they can slow that game down, which is weird to say for a Panthers game, if they can slow that game down, I think that I do like the Panthers here. Now, one thing I will say though is that we need the Panthers goaltender. There's I do like Florida, but there's no chance that I'll be betting Florida if I see Bobrovsky in goal. So I do need confirmation on night before I move forward. But if it is night, I like Florida. And hopefully in a tighter, low scoring kind of game.
Zach, what's the best price you have for the Panthers up on the board? Because I was looking at this game too, and this qualified for me at Panthers minus 110, which is around where it was last night. But fundamentally, it comes down to what you make of Barkov and his win probability that he adds, or in this case, subtracts, because I've kind of had it built in at around 3%. And he's been out for a few games now, and the market's kind of, sometimes it's adjusted. I felt like that for him not being in the lineup. And then other times, I think against the Canucks, for example, they were like, yeah, we don't really even seem to care whether Barkov is playing or not. And the price, was actually pretty fair in that game. And so if, you sort of adhere to the idea that he sort of, has a 3-4% win probability here, subtracted, then, I have to stay off of the Panthers. But if it's a situation, as so many mentions, that like they seem to be sort of, rallying around it or sort of, making up for what he usually brings to the team, and a lot of that is sort of defensive responsibility, then, then he honestly, for a game or two here, it might not matter that he's not in the lineup, especially against a team like Winnipeg. So it's something that I was looking at minus 110, sort of saw this morning that it's closer to minus 120. That's kind of put me off of that. But if so money's on it, then I might have to get back in, even at a price that I don't necessarily love.
Yeah, right now I was seeing just minus 115 there. Sorry, so money.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, just wait for the goalie. There's no chance I'm betting this game with Bob.
Fair enough.
What price would you need? Well, what price would you need to bet Florida? Like if he was in and all of a sudden you're getting plus money, like how high do we need to go?
Like plus 400? No. No, I would I haven't plugged it in, but like I know that like with Bob and goal, it's a significant downgrade for me. So we're probably looking at a plus 105 range. Okay. that I would need to even consider, and I know that's even a lot lower than what others in the market will think, but I think that's how bad Bobrovsky is for me right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
And Todd, you were looking at a total in this game.
Yes, I really like under 6.5. As so many mentioned, the Panthers are missing some key forwards, which kind of takes some of the pop out of their attack, and they're trying to tighten up and play a bit lower event, which I like. I also love the goaltending matchup in this game, assuming it goes the way it should. Hellebuck has a .931 save percentage and is third in the league in goals saved above expected. He's been fantastic, as he always is. And Spencer Knight has been really good for the Panthers, especially of late. He has saved 4.4 goals above expected, whereas Bobrovsky's minus 8.6. So if it is Hellebuck versus Knight, I really like under 6.5, especially with Barkov and Lundell. I just don't see Florida creating the same volume of chances, and that's what they're going to need to do probably to score more than a couple past Hellebuck.
All right, so we will lock in the under 6.5 on the BetStamp app. I'm seeing best price that's widely available, at least, or should be available for most people, will be minus 109 on that. But again, if you shop around, you can find that around minus 105, minus 106, depending on what type of books you have. And we will wait on the goaltending news. Perhaps by the end of this show, we'll get that. It's not like it hasn't happened before with goalie updates being given out on this show. Now, going to a game that everyone cares about, I'm sure, because it's the most important point streak in the NHL right now. That will be Mitch Marner, 19 consecutive games with a point. He's going head to head with Jason Robertson, who is on an 18-game point streak at this point for the Dallas Stars. This one's interesting because you're looking at a Leafs team here who they're missing a bunch of defenders. Their top defenders, really. I mean, Morgan Rielly, Jake Muzzin, TJ Brody. TJ Brody looks like he'll probably come back at some point. It's not going to be here tonight, but you're seeing the debut of Connor Timmins. You're seeing the debut of Semyon Duragin-Chintsev. Like, this Leafs team has just been plug and play, and they've still been able to get things done here. They just lost a 5-game win streak against Tampa the other night, but even then, if you watch the game, like, they were right in it. They by no means were they dominated by Tampa. In fact, they probably deserved to win that game. It just went to overtime, and don't get me started on the Leafs overtimes, because as soon as it goes there, that one's a loss. So write it off. But they're going up against a Dallas team who they performed well last year. They got to the playoffs, and man, were they a hard out. And a lot of it is because they had Jake Ottinger in net, and he is an incredible goaltender. But now all of a sudden, they've got life out of Jamie Benn. They're getting some life out of Tyler Seguin, and it makes that team a whole lot more difficult to face every single night because they are big, they are heavy, they can wear you down, but now they can score a whole bunch of goals, and some of it is coming from guys that they didn't even have to go out and acquire. They already had within them. So Money, I know that you are absolutely hating something in this game here tonight, but tell us about what you're thinking with the Leafs Dallas Stars game tonight and the most important point streak in the NHL that everyone should have their eyes on.
Maybe even in NHL history.
Ever.
I did play the Leafs. I played them earlier. I see them. They're up to minus 108, minus 110. You can still get them. That's fine. The big takeaway for me from the Leafs right now is that they're a team that is very good defensively, and it doesn't really show up when you kind of watch their games, but they have a sound defensive structure. Even through that Tampa Bay game, yeah, they gave up 3 goals in regulation, right? But I thought they played very well defensively, and as you said, there was they probably you could make a case that they probably should have won that game. It just once these games get to a coin flip, it's just obviously it can go either way. Dallas, very fun team to watch this year. My concern about Dallas is that we know that lately they have been trying to play better defensively, but in a game where both teams are trying to get there, I have more faith in Toronto with the way that they have played all season to be able to kind of not shut Dallas down necessarily, but limit them to a point where I think that Toronto can take one here in Dallas. So I think it's Toronto was a little bit short, and I do like them here.
So here comes Matt, old contrarian Matt, has to go head to head with everybody on the show. He just can't let anybody just have any fun. I think this is a really interesting game, especially in contrast to what we just talked about with regards to the Panthers, right? And this is sort of a pet theory for me. Now, from a power rating standpoint, the Leafs power rating at this point is kind of fluctuates on how much importance you put on the fact that they have these cluster injuries to the defense, right? In the same way that Florida has these cluster injuries to the forwards. I have this little pet theory when it comes to hockey and that type of thing where, you can get by a game or two when you're without a bunch of defensemen, right? Like you can kind of make up for that. We can obviously, have a forward play further back and, all of that kind of thing, right? You just sort of from an attitude standpoint, you can play better defensively. Whereas, over the long term, as these guys who aren't used to these minutes get hit over and over and over, they're playing all these extra minutes, right? Like it kind of like falls apart a little bit over the course of an extended period of time. And I think that's what you're going to see when it comes to the Leafs. Whereas for forwards, it's kind of really noticeable in that first game because, you're missing that first line guy or that second line guy, and the power play is less functional and the chemistry up front is less functional. But if you sub, maybe the most talented third line guy, or you bring up a guy from the minor leagues or something like that, who's going to get that offensive playing time, he eventually sort of gets used to it, finds his role, is less sort of in over his head, et cetera, et cetera. And like, it can kind of work out over the long term where it kind of spreads out. So they're kind of both go in different directions. And so when it comes to the Leafs here, I'm looking at this and I'm kind of tweaking my defensive power rating here with the Leafs. And I think it has a lot to do with the matchup, right? And I think I have to make it kind of more impactful against a team, as Zach said, who is heavy and who is going to kind of bring the noise on the forecheck, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't have this sort of power rated at its core to be sort of a bet that needs to be made. But if I kind of tip the scales because of this defensive matchup for the Leafs against this team specifically, then I think that the Stars become more valuable. And the other thing is with the schedule here, this is kind of a weird spot for the Leafs, right? Like play a bunch of games at home and then on the road. And then now they went home for one game and then it's like back on the road to Tampa and then over to Dallas. And then they're going to be back home largely throughout the holidays where they have just, I think, one sort of Eastern relatively quick trip. And it's just kind of this throwaway sort of weird game for them on the schedule. And again, a matchup that I think is not particularly great for them, where, by the way, the goaltending matchup is, you can say it's not usually all that great for the Leafs, but especially against Ottinger here. So I think there's just a couple of extra things here in this game specifically that are tipping the scales kind of away from the Leafs. And it starts with the defense.
Yeah. So I do completely agree with you that I think in like the short term, you can make up for defensive injuries and stuff like that. But what I would say is that we know who's out for the Leafs. We know how long they've been out. And at this point, I would argue that that's already been priced into the market, right? Because of where the Leafs opened in this game. So like if let's say those guys were in, there's no way that we would get the Leafs at this price.
Well, and that's what I mean by like the number that I have is fair. Right. The number that I have that I've been using for the Leafs over the course of the period where they have been without Riley and Brody, et cetera, and Muzzin, et cetera. Like it's been the same, power rating essentially, or affected power rating essentially. This is one where I just kind of look at it from a matchup and I go like, I kind of think I need to put more weight on the idea that the Leafs are thin defensively because this team in the Stars is going to make them pay for, all of these minutes that have added up for guys who are, obviously less experienced. Whereas like I might pop the Leafs right back into the old number, if you will, for their next game. I forget who they're playing next, but like it's not going to be a team with a forward group as good as the Dallas Stars, I guess is the point.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And like the great thing about hockey too is that like you can make up for your defensive deficiencies if you have everybody buying in, right? And like you have the forwards back checking, you have guys that they have bought in, which I think is great to see, and I wish that I saw that more with like the team I watch.
Well, and that's why I bring up the schedule thing, because I don't, normally like to sort of, tell a story with the schedule, but that's why I bring up the schedule element where it's like, how much does this really matter to the Leafs, this game specifically, right? Because the season's going along pretty well here, and anytime, obviously, the Leafs come to town, especially for the Western teams, that the Leafs coming to town means something. And I think that's another reason why you might be disappointed in the Canucks effort in that first period, because when Montreal comes to town, like that's a big game for Vancouver, no matter what. Anytime Toronto or Montreal, and obviously to a lesser extent, Ottawa come to town, that's a big deal. Anytime the Leafs or an original 16 comes to town for any of these teams, like they get up for it out west.
My feelings on the Habs and the Leafs jerseys in the crowd whenever they come in town, that would take up a whole show.
And it should.
All right, let's get to one more game here quickly because I know there's a best bet. Before we get into Todd's props, I know he's got a lot here tonight. Matt, you're looking at the Anaheim Ducks game here tonight. As soon as you said that was a gross one. I got, you want to hear like a bad beat? I had snuck in Ducks first period and Ducks full game against the Minnesota Wild this weekend, and they were tied 1-1. I was looking at a push at the end of the first period, and Max Jones scored in his own net, so then they lose the first period 2-1, and then they battle back. They're winning the game, and Kirill Kaprizov sends it to overtime, and then they get a 2-on-1 and a 2-on-0 in overtime. And unfortunately, they can't capitalize, and it ends up that it goes to shootout, and they lose in the shootout. So that was quite a bad bounce for myself in that one. But what is compelling you to go and look at the Anaheim Ducks here tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes?
What could compel somebody to make that sort of decision? Honestly, as same as it always is, right? It's just kind of a numbers thing, right? And what would compel me to bet on the Flyers at home against the Avalanche yesterday, right? And I had an 8% edge on the Flyers because why? Nobody wants anything to do with the Flyers. And yeah, most of the time they're not going to win that game, but you wake up the next morning having not watched 1 second of that game and you go, oh, the Flyers won. Because when we're talking about teams that are plus 220, plus 230, and obviously higher than that, right? You're probably not going to win the game. That's the whole point of probabilities. But my numbers have this closer to, honestly, sub plus 200. I wouldn't have bet this at plus 200, but now we're up into like the plus 230s. We're headed for 240. Who knows where we might be next? Now, if you want to sort of come up with a story to kind of back this up, Carolina, they've won a bunch of games in a row. They're on this road trip. And if you look at their schedule, it looks like they're on a 7-game road trip. But the reality is it's actually a 5-game road trip where they play tonight and they don't play again until Saturday, which means they're headed home after this game before they go back out on the road for 2 more in, I believe it's like New York and Detroit or something along those lines. They have obviously won, I think, every one of these games. They are starting the backup goaltender, Antti Raanta, which at this point is probably their 3rd best goaltender in the organization. And by the way, they just played in LA on Saturday, which if you're looking for kind of a sleepy spot, a couple of days in Los Angeles at this time of year is maybe you're not super locked in on that Ducks game that you've got coming down the pipe, given the fact that, again, you've had a successful road trip and you are headed home. All of that is to say, I fully expect Carolina to win the game because I think Carolina is a very good hockey team. But we're talking about a plus, I'm seeing plus 235 to 240 at this point.
Yeah.
I think we can wait even a little bit longer because people love betting on the Carolina Hurricanes. People are going to throw this in there like, let's finish off the day with an easy winner parlay type situation. Let's cap a 3-teamer with Carolina. So we might be getting even a better price by the time the puck drops here. This is a full-on sort of sadomasochistic type deal here anytime you're getting involved in the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. But yeah, let's quack our way to another upset win. We're riding high for those who follow the Score NHL betting guide after a Flyers win, which again, I watched 0 seconds of last night. So maybe I don't realize what I'm getting myself into backing these terrible teams, but the numbers say what the numbers say, and that's why we're on the Ducks here at a big price.
Yeah, I had the Flyers last night as well. So
Attaboy.
I was in this very similar position on that one. All right, we need a name for that. We might need a name for this segment because it's just rapid fire. I don't know, Matt, So Money, if you guys have any thoughts. I was like, Todd might reach through the screen and choke me out, but I was thinking off the top of my head, like Toddy Props. This is the Toddy Props section.
Oh, God.
But Todd, why don't you take the floor? You got this one, and just all your best props for tonight.
All right, I'll just tee off here.
Yeah.
All right. Mark Scheifele over 2.5 shots, minus 118. The Panthers are obviously missing Barkov and Lundell, thinner down the middle. Scheifele's hit the over in 9 of the last 10 games, 7 straight home games. Kyle Connor's the only guy in the Jets with more shot attempts over the last 10, but it's very close, and Connor's line is 3.5, whereas Scheifele's 2.5. I think there's some value there. Nikita Kucherov over 3.5. He averages an extra shot and an extra couple of attempts per game at home as opposed to the road. He hit all 4 meetings against the Red Wings last season. He always seems to tee off on them. I like him at home. Martin Necas over 3.5 at plus 138. The Ducks give up a bazillion shots. If, as Matt said, they actually go ahead and are leading in this game, then they're just going to absorb a ton of shots. It's a really good spot for Necas. Carter Verhaeghe over 2.5, minus 130. He's playing top line, top power play with Florida's injuries up front. The last couple of games without Lundell and Barkov, he leads the team in shot attempts, scoring chances, shots on goal, pretty much every other offensive category that involves shots. So I like him as well. Then I have a couple of little parlays here. I have John Tavares and Noah Dobson, both over 2.5. Dobson's been shooting the lights out of late, and the Blues give up a lot of shots to defensemen. Tavares, he always shoots more on the road because he doesn't see the tough matchups. Everyone's keying on Matthews. I believe Tavares has hit 9 of the last 10 on the road. And then I have Jaden Schwartz and Claude Giroux, both under 2.5. Schwartz only has like 25 attempts the last 10 games. So like he's not shooting at all. He literally would need to hit every single shot to actually get to 3 shots. And then for Giroux, it's similar kind of story. He doesn't shoot at all. He just passes to Kachuk every single chance he gets. And the Kings are pretty good at suppressing shots. So I like that matchup as well. And that's all.
All right.
The world according to Cordell, I think is what I've got there.
All right. I like that. It's definitely better than Toddy Props. So Todd, I'm sorry for even having suggested that. But if you weren't sure what the props were that Todd just gave out there, make sure you go over to the BetStamp app. You can find us on that little icon that says Find Betters. It's two little people beside each other there. You click on that, you can search Edgework, and you can find all the picks that are given out on this show in real time. You can track them throughout the day. You can track the progress, the line movement, all that kind of stuff, and then you can see how they perform at the end of the night. If you guys missed this and you watched on YouTube, or you want to watch on YouTube, make sure to go over to Edgework on the YouTube channel, or you could go over to podcast platforms where you can find us across all different podcast platforms and listen back as soon as the show is over. Thank you guys so much for tuning in here today. Thank you, Matt, Todd, so money for the insight. Greatly appreciate it as always. I will see everyone next Tuesday. Good luck on your bets tonight.
Thanks, guys.